Hey guys, Chris from Drift Outfitters here, and today I'm going to show you a really simple little tube fly you can tie for steelhead or bass locally. This is a dead simple fly, but super effective, super fishy fly, and just involves a few very easy to work with materials. This is a little kind of Zonker wing tube fly here. So we'll jump right into it here. Pull this one off. For our tube today, we have my favorite, the Sportfisher Flexitube in the 40/40. You could do, they make a slightly shorter one as well that this would work with. You don't need much length for this particular fly. To start off with, I'm not going to use much of this front end, so I will trim that down a little bit like so. I'm going to cut that about halfway, this skinny stuff here. And I love these tubes because they are just much simpler to use than a lot of traditional sort of tube fly systems, where you would have two different diameters of tubing, but they would be separate products, and you would have to sort of affix them together to create your tube even before you start tying. So this just really simplifies the whole process and speeds you up, getting you tying much quicker. For my thread, this is a rusty brown Veevus in a 10/0, and I'm just going to start that off just ahead of the thicker tubing here on the thinner stuff. I'm going to come back over it here. I'm going to start by just taking my thread back a little ways here. Not too far back, probably about 1/3 to maybe almost halfway. And I'm going to catch in our first material, which I have here. This is a pearl Veevus tinsel in a large size. Gonna trim off a decent amount. This is probably about 6 inches, 7 inches of the stuff. Just because you're going to want to wrap this over the entirety of this body section, and because you're wrapping over a fairly thick diameter tubing, it will take a lot of the time more tinsel than you think. Okay, bring that forward a little ways. And I like to tie in a rib on this fly. It's not super critical, but this is just a uni wire and a small copper. Use whatever you like for this, or just omit the step even. I think that using glue on tubes can make them sometimes a little bit more on the brittle side, like when you're coating the whole body. And so I like to avoid that, but the tinsel itself is fairly slippery stuff, like the pearl tinsel that is. And so I like the copper wire just to sort of lock it in there. So I'm just gonna catch this in and tie it in the full body length of our fly. And then I'm just going to bring my thread back forward, and you'll notice I'm trying to sort of cover up the tube relatively well. It doesn't have to be perfect. But the reason that I'm doing this is for a couple reasons. One, just to give our materials a little more purchase and grip on the tube itself, but even more so, one effect that I really like to take advantage of sometimes is by using this pearl tinsel, which is fairly translucent, and wrapping over a colored thread. You see through to the body color underneath, and it just gives you a really neat effect. So if you want to take advantage of that, it's a cool little trick. This is going to mostly be covered up by the materials, so I wouldn't fret about this stage too much if it's not perfect. This is all for your peace of mind and confidence there. My last wrap slipped actually a little bit, so I'm just going to take a wrap off and tighten that up. There we go. You can use a flat braid or something for this body too, but you can kind of see there the brown just shining through that body. It's kind of a neat look. I'm going to take my wire here. You don't need to counter wrap for this because your wraps are going to be so much wider than the tinsel you just wrapped on. They're going to crisscross the individual wraps there. So I'm just going to spiral that up the body, about 5 wraps or so. Try and space them more or less evenly. And I'm just going to tie that off at that transition point here. And I'll just wind this wire to break it off. Maybe. There we go. All right. Now, we're almost there. It's a very simple fly. Wing on this guy is just going to be a Zonker strips. This is your standard rabbit strip. You can tie this in multitude of different colors. For our waters around here, Olive is absolutely one of the best go-to colors. Just a nice natural bait fish sort of sculpin look. So I'm going to be tying this right over the top. Length is sort of up to you. I usually want this to extend, body and a half length roughly. So I just sort of roughly eyeball that. That's about the right length in my mind. So I'm just going to mark that with my thumb here. Take my scissors. I'm just going to sneak my scissors underneath the fur on this hide. So I'm ideally just catching the hide itself. And snip that so you can see I haven't nicked any fibers that I didn't want to here. And then to make this tie off a little cleaner, there's a few things you can do. First thing I like to do is, and you don't have to do this, you can actually just tie this in square, but I find this a little cleaner, is if you snip the hide here, a little bit of an angle and a little bit of an angle. So you have a little bit of a point to this, just taper down the hide slightly. That will make for a smaller tie-in point. The other thing you can do is you can actually tie this in reverse. So what you want to do there is you tie this in hide up and with the hair facing forward. Hold it down, and I'm just trying to sort of catch it by the points there that I've cut on the hide. So you can see I've got a real nice small tie-in point here. It's butting right up against the edge of that thicker tubing, and then I'll fold it back here and bring my thread just in front. This will also stand that rabbit up a little bit. That doesn't really get us much extra body and bulk in this this fly, but it does make for a really nice clean tie-in point because now I'm not tying over top of additional hide in front here. Now for the next step, I do like a little flash on my flies. So this is Mirage Flash from Flashabou. This is a pearl, like an opal gold color, I think they call it here. I'm just going to take a few strands of this. Snip them off. And I'm going to tie in that clump on one side of the fly here, and then sort of loop it around to the other side and tie it down again. Length should be about the same length as your Zonker strip, so I'll just trim that there. And then the collar on here I'm going to use is some Marabou. So this is just sort of a rusty brown Marabou, rusty brown, crawfish brown. That kind of a color cream would look really good on this guy too. And this isn't the giant select stuff. That actually does work on this fly pretty well, but this isn't the main focal point of this fly. This is more complementary to the rabbit. And so I am perfectly fine with slightly shorter fibers on just a regular sort of blood quill here. So I'll pull off some of the more straggly fibers at the bottom. And just like doing a popsicle or anything like that, I'm just going to pull down from the tip here some of those fibers to get them out of the way, expose that tip. I'll just lay that on top, catch it in, fold that tip back, tie it down as well, and then this tip I'll just snip out. Grab a hold of the stem, and just like we're doing when we're doing like a hair wing style tube, I'm just going to put a couple wraps of this Marabou right in front of this rabbit, and that'll help hold it back in the position that we want it in. So I'm just taking my time with this, making sure that I'm not trapping too many fibers here. Oops. And then I don't want to catch in all this excess, so if I can see clearly a few more fibers than I want on the stem, I'll just pluck them off. Find it easier to tie in that way. Catch in the stem. Snip off the excess. There we go, you can see that strip is being held back a little better now. Now I think every fly is improved with the addition of rubber legs. So these are the Wapsi sort of fire-tipped legs. silly legs, olive and orange. So you can see they're olive with orange tips. I think that really blends nicely with this color combo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pluck a couple off of here. So I have a pair of legs here. And I'm going to double them over my thread so I kind of, it just allows me to eyeball the midpoint. So I've doubled them over my bobbin here. And the reason I like to make sure I'm tying them in by the midpoint is just that these tips are lined up. And I'm going to tie them in on one side. So I'm not actually folding the legs back over themselves, I'm just tying them down on one side here. And then I'm going to take them, give them a little bit of a stretch, and fold them over the other. This one strand flash is getting in the way here. I might just sacrifice that one. It's being a little unruly. So give them a little stretch, fold them over to the complete opposite side there, and tie them back like so. And these guys will flop around. They aren't really going to look like much in the vise. They might get in the way a little bit, so I'll just kind of pull them back into the fly there, get them out of the way. And then to finish this guy off, this is just an olive hen saddle here that I have. And you can use schlappen for this too. Schlappen looks really good. I'm just going to find one of the larger feathers on this saddle. That looks good to me. It's a nice large hen hackle here. I'm just going to pull some fibers down away from the tip. Like so. Tie that in just by the tip, right at the front. Pull that back, tie it down again. I'll just trim away that tip section. We'll just quickly fold those back slightly. And we're going to make as many wraps as this feather is going to allow us just to the front here. That's one. Taking your time, this is going to be the last material, so nothing else to cover up to hide mistakes. Make sure you do it right the first time. Just catch in. Oops. There we go. Catch in that tag in there. This is a great fly, just filled with movement. I mean, I can't think of two materials that move better than rabbit and marabou. They just breathe so well in the water, move so well, and the rubber legs just add that little bit of vibration too. It's a really cool little fly. Really simple one. I won't claim to have invented the thing. I think there have been lots of variations of flies like this. It really doesn't get much simpler. But man, do they catch fish. The legs, I don't want to be the full length. I'm going to cut these, I'd say about halfway down the hot spot, like colored tips, if that makes sense. So they're just short of the total length of the fly. I'll just flap around it down there and go wild. And yeah, hard to beat this thing. Really cool little fly. That is your Zonker and Marabou tube. Give it a go.